My name is Alexandra Pierce, but you can call me Alex. I'm 32 years old. I found myself crumpled at the base of a cold concrete hospital stairwell, a white-hot fire of pain spreading through every single nerve in my body. My vision swam in and out of focus, a blurry, disorienting mess, but through the haze, I could just make out the silhouette of my sister, Chloe, standing at the top of the flight of stairs I'd just tumbled down. A cruel, triumphant smile played on her lips, an expression of pure satisfaction. "You had it coming," she mouthed, the words a silent, vicious dagger. The next thing I knew, the stairwell door burst open and my parents scrambled past me, their frantic footsteps echoing on the concrete. They didn't even glance in my direction. Their focus was entirely on Chloe as they immediately enveloped her in their arms just as she burst into perfectly timed, theatrical sobs. "It was an accident, wasn't it, honey?" my father asked, his voice shaking with a desperate, pleading need for her to say yes. I tried to scream, to tell them the truth, to force them to see me lying there, broken, but the agony was a physical gag in my throat. All that came out was a strangled gasp, and that's when my eyes landed on her, head nurse Brenda, standing in the doorway to the third-floor landing. Her sharp eyes flicked from me to my family coddling Chloe, and then, deliberately, up to the small domed security camera mounted in the ceiling corner. I saw her finger move subtly on the tablet she was holding, and in that split second I knew she understood, and she was saving the footage. Before I get into what happened next, I'd be really interested to know where you're watching this from. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button and give this video a like to find out how that single piece of security footage would unravel my family's web of lies and change my life forever. Growing up in our sprawling, upscale Denver suburb, I always felt like a ghost in my own family. Our Tudor-style house with its perfectly manicured rose bushes and a sparkling, heated swimming pool was the very picture of suburban perfection from the street. But inside those pristine walls, the reality was anything but perfect. I figured it out early on that my sister Chloe, who is 3 years younger than me, was the designated golden child. At 29, Chloe was the kind of beautiful that stopped people in their tracks. Sun-kissed blonde hair, piercing green eyes, and a dazzling smile she had weaponized from a young age. She knew exactly how to use that charm to wrap our parents, Catherine and Richard Pierce, around her little finger. The dynamic was set in stone when we were just kids. For my 8th birthday, my parents had planned a big party in our backyard with all my friends from school. I'd been counting down the days for weeks. My mom had promised me a special 3-layer cake with my favorite raspberry cream filling. When the day finally came, I walked into the kitchen to find Chloe, then 5, having a full-blown tantrum. She was hysterical because the party wasn't for her. Instead of patiently explaining to a 5-year-old how birthdays work, my mother immediately got on the phone with the bakery and had them add Chloe's name in bright pink frosting right next to mine on my own birthday cake. By the time the party was over, Chloe had torn open 3 of my presents, insisting they must have been for her. When I finally burst into tears and complained, my father took me into his study. "Why can't you be more generous, Alex? Your sister is so good at sharing," he said, his voice thick with disappointment. "She shares everything with you." That was the first time I clearly remember understanding my designated place in our family's hierarchy, but it was far from the last. When I consistently made the honor roll throughout high school, my parents would offer a distracted nod before changing the subject. But when Chloe managed to scrape by with a C+ in algebra that same year, they took her out to a 5-star restaurant to celebrate her incredible improvement. The year I won a full academic scholarship to the University of Colorado Boulder, my achievement was given a brief, passing mention over dinner. A few months later, when Chloe announced she might want to attend a local community college part-time, my parents threw a lavish party and bought her a brand new convertible as motivation. Our court-appointed family therapist, Dr. Evans, never seemed to notice the glaring imbalance. I tried desperately to explain the pattern during our mandatory weekly sessions when I was 16, but he would just offer a sympathetic, patronizing smile and suggest I was likely experiencing normal sibling rivalry. My parents would nod in solemn agreement while Chloe would artfully dab at her dry eyes, claiming she just wanted a better relationship with her jealous older sister. Despite the constant emotional sabotage, I poured everything I had into building my own life. I worked 2 jobs to put myself through graduate school, determined to be independent. By the time I was 31, I'd just been promoted to marketing director at a fast-growing tech firm downtown. The promotion had been finalized just 2 weeks before the incident at the hospital. When I called my parents to share the exciting news, my mother's first response was, "Oh, that's nice, dear. But did you hear Chloe might be getting back together with James? You know, his family founded that big law firm." The incident that changed absolutely everything happened when my grandmother, Evelyn, was admitted to the hospital with a severe case of pneumonia. At 84, she was the only member of my family who had ever shown me genuine, unconditional love. She'd moved in with my parents after my grandfather passed away 5 years prior, and I made it a priority to visit her every week, no matter how uncomfortable the atmosphere in my childhood home was. That day, I arrived at St. Luke's Medical Center at exactly 2 in the afternoon. My parents were already in Grandma Evelyn's room, perched stiffly in the vinyl visitor chairs while she dozed. They gave me brief, curt nods as I entered. I pulled a chair close to her bed and gently took her frail hand in mine. When she woke up a few minutes later, her face broke into a weak but genuine smile that made my heart ache. We talked for nearly an hour, her voice raspy, about the new tomato varieties she wanted to plant in her garden come spring, and about my new role at work. My parents would occasionally interrupt to steer the conversation toward Chloe's latest achievements, which mostly revolved around her growing social media following and a vague opportunity to be an influencer for a local boutique. Chloe finally made her grand entrance nearly 2 hours late, armed with a small, chic gift bag and a flurry of dramatic excuses about an unexpected traffic jam on the highway. My grandmother was polite but visibly exhausted. When she drifted back to sleep, Chloe immediately pivoted to the topic that was clearly on her mind. "I really think I should get the emerald necklace," she declared, pulling out her compact mirror to examine her reflection. "It matches my eyes perfectly, and Alex doesn't even wear that kind of jewelry." My mother nodded instantly. "That makes sense, dear. We should probably start making a list of these things soon, just so we're prepared." I was floored. "She's getting better, not dying," I said, my voice sharp with disbelief. "And maybe we shouldn't be dividing up her belongings while she's literally lying right here in the room." My father shot me that familiar, withering look of disapproval. "Always so dramatic, Alexandra. We're just being practical." The tension in the room was a thick, suffocating blanket by the time visiting hours ended at 7. Grandma had only been awake for short periods, and I felt a wave of guilt about the toxic atmosphere we had created around her. As we were all gathering our coats and purses to leave, I saw Chloe deftly slip something from Grandma's bedside drawer into her designer handbag. I didn't say anything, but I made a mental note to check what was missing the next time I visited. We all left Grandma Evelyn's room together, my father leading the way down the long corridor toward the elevators. The hallway was hushed, the silence broken only by the squeak of a nurse's sneakers on the polished linoleum and the distant, rhythmic beeping of unseen machines. My mother walked with her arm linked through Chloe's, their heads bent together in a hushed, conspiratorial conversation. I caught phrases like diamond earrings and family tradition, which only made the knot in my stomach tighten. As we neared the elevators, Chloe suddenly turned to me, her voice loud enough for a passing orderly to hear. "That shade of lipstick really washes you out, Alex," she said. "And is that the same blouse you wore to Cousin Jessica's wedding last year? I guess that big promotion hasn't done much for your fashion sense, has it?" I took a deep, steadying breath, determined not to rise to the bait. "I'm not really focused on my lipstick right now, Chloe. I'm worried about Grandma." My mother immediately swooped in to defend her. "Your sister is just trying to help you. Alexandra, you could stand to put a little more effort into your appearance, especially now that you're representing the family at that fancy new job." The familiar sting of them ganging up on me burned, but decades of practice had taught me how to swallow my hurt. The elevator arrived with a soft ding, and my father held the door open. The thought of being trapped in that small, suffocating space with them for 6 floors was suddenly unbearable. "I think I'll take the stairs," I announced, stepping back. "I could use the exercise." My father just shrugged. "Suit yourself." The elevator doors were sliding shut when I heard Chloe say to my mother, "I should probably talk to her." She seemed really upset about the jewelry conversation. Before I could fully process what she was doing, Chloe had slipped out of the closing elevator and was walking toward the stairwell door behind me. I pushed it open, the heavy metal cool against my palm. The stairwell was brightly lit and eerily empty, our footsteps echoing on the concrete as I started down. "You don't have to pretend you care," I said over my shoulder, my hand gripping the cold metal handrail. Chloe's voice lost all of its syrupy sweetness, dropping to a low, menacing tone she reserved for when our parents weren't around. "I saw you watching me in Grandma's room. Always the self-righteous one, aren't you?" I paused on the landing between the 5th and 4th floors and turned to face her. "Did you take something from her drawer?" Chloe's perfectly manicured hand clutched her expensive purse even tighter. "That's none of your business. Besides, she promised me all her jewelry years ago." "That's a lie, and you know it," I shot back. "Grandma would never play favorites the way Mom and Dad do." Something ugly flashed in Chloe's eyes. "Everyone plays favorites, Alex. It's not my fault you're never the one who gets picked." I just shook my head, exhausted, and turned to continue down the stairs. "I'm not doing this with you, not here. It must be so hard." Chloe's voice followed me, dripping with mock sympathy as she stayed close behind. "Getting that big promotion when we all know you'll never really be good enough. Does your new boss know your own family can barely stand to be around you?" I kept walking, my jaw tight, focusing on each step. 1, 2, 3, 4. I saw the way Grandma's face lit up when you walked in today. Chloe's voice had taken on a dangerous, sharp edge. "She never, ever looks at me like that." "Maybe that's because you only visit her when you want something," I retorted without looking back. "You know she changed her will last month, don't you?" Chloe said, her voice right behind my ear now. "Right after you started helping her with all that physical therapy. Suddenly you're the one getting the beach house, the one Dad promised to me." I stopped on the landing between the 4th and 3rd floors and spun around, genuinely surprised. "What are you talking about? I don't know anything about her will." Chloe's face was flushed, her eyes blazing with rage. "Don't play innocent with me. You've been manipulating her for months, turning her against me, just like you're always trying to turn Mom and Dad against me with your perfect job and your perfect little apartment." "That's insane," I said, completely bewildered. "I have never once discussed any of that with Grandma. And now you're going to tell them about the money, aren't you?" Chloe's voice had risen to a near shout, echoing in the stairwell, about the gambling. "You've just been waiting for your chance to make me look bad." And just like that, it all clicked into place. The constant, unexplained borrowing from our parents, the luxury handbags that would appear and then vanish, the perpetual need for just a little help with her rent. I hadn't known it was gambling specifically, but the destructive pattern suddenly made perfect, terrifying sense. "Chloe, I don't care about your gambling. That's between you and whatever therapist you should have been seeing years ago. I just want to leave." I turned to go down the final flight of stairs, and that's when it happened. I felt 2 hands slam into the middle of my back, a hard, deliberate shove that sent me lurching forward, completely off balance. There was a horrifying moment of weightlessness as my feet left the step. My hands flailed, grasping desperately for the railing but finding only empty air. The fall felt like it happened in slow motion. My body tumbled end over end, a sickening, chaotic sensation as gravity took control. I felt every single impact against the unforgiving concrete steps. 1. My shoulder slammed into the edge. 2. My hip cracked against the wall. 3. The side of my head hit with a dull thud. 4. A sharp, explosive pain in my ribs stole my breath. The agony exploded through me in nauseating waves, each one more intense than the last. Through the haze of shock, I heard myself cry out, the sound swallowed by the sterile emptiness of the stairwell. As I fell, fragmented memories flashed through my mind like a broken film reel. Chloe, as a child, methodically cutting the hair off all my dolls and claiming it was an accident. Chloe, as a teenager, accidentally spilling a full glass of red punch on my white prom dress an hour before my date arrived. Chloe, in college, accidentally deleting my senior thesis from the family computer the night before it was due. But this was no accident. I finally came to a stop at the bottom of the flight, sprawled in a heap on the landing between the third and second floors. My vision was filled with black spots, but I could still see Chloe at the top of the stairs, that satisfied, cruel smile spreading across her face. The expression vanished in an instant as the stairwell door above her flew open and my parents rushed in. "Chloe, what happened?" My mother's voice shrieked with panic. "She fell," Chloe cried, her voice suddenly trembling with manufactured fear. I tried to catch her, but she was going too fast. My parents hurried down the stairs, but they didn't come to me. Instead, they swarmed around Chloe, who had now artfully collapsed onto a step, her shoulders shaking with perfectly timed sobs. "You had it coming," she had mouthed just seconds before. Now I watched through a blinding fog of pain as my father wrapped a protective arm around her. "It was an accident, right, Chloe?" he asked, his voice urgent and leading. I tried to speak, to tell them what really happened, but all I could manage was a low groan. Just then, the stairwell door on our landing burst open and head nurse Brenda rushed in, followed by 2 male orderlies. "Call a code," she commanded, immediately kneeling beside me. As she leaned in close to check my pupils, her gaze flicked upwards to the corner of the ceiling. That's when I noticed the small domed security camera again, its tiny red light blinking steadily. Nurse Brenda had seen it too, and the look on her face told me she understood exactly what had just happened. "Don't move her yet," Nurse Brenda instructed the orderlies as she expertly stabilized my neck. Her hands were gentle but firm, her eyes focused entirely on assessing my injuries. I tried to speak again, but only a whimper escaped as a fresh spike of pain shot through my ribs with each shallow breath. My parents remained several steps above us, still fussing over Chloe, who had now escalated her performance to full-blown hysterics. Through my foggy consciousness, I heard my father explaining the situation to another hospital staff member who had arrived. My daughters were walking down the stairs. Alexandra was going too fast and simply lost her footing. Chloe tried to catch her, but couldn't reach her in time. "She just fell so suddenly," Chloe added between her dramatic sobs. "One minute we were talking about Grandma, and the next she was just tumbling." I screamed for help, but it all happened so fast. Nurse Brenda's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly at their story, but she kept her professional focus on me. "We're going to move you onto a backboard now," she explained in a calm, steady voice. "Try to remain as still as possible. Can you tell me your name?" "Alex," I managed to whisper. "Alexandra Pierce." "Good, Alex. Can you tell me where you feel the pain?" "Everywhere," I gasped. "My ribs, my head, my wrist." The orderlies carefully slid a hard backboard beneath me, securing straps across my body. As they prepared to lift, I saw Nurse Brenda glance up at the security camera one more time, a thoughtful, determined look on her face. She turned to one of the other nurses who had arrived. "Julie, please make a note of the time of this incident and ensure all security footage from this stairwell is preserved," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "It's standard procedure for all falls within the hospital. As they lifted me onto a stretcher, a wave of pure agony washed over me, and I had to fight to stay conscious. Through slitted eyes, I saw my mother finally walk over, her hand resting protectively on Chloe's shoulder. "We'll follow you down," she told the medical team, pointedly avoiding my gaze. Chloe is in terrible shock. She tried so hard to save her sister. The stretcher began to move, and I was whisked through endless corridors, the fluorescent lights overhead blurring into a nauseating streak. In the emergency department, Dr. Winters, a stern-faced man with salt and pepper hair, quickly assessed my condition. CT scan of the head and chest, plus an X-ray of the left wrist. Stat, he ordered. Likely a concussion, possible internal injuries. The next few hours were a fragmented nightmare. The cold, sterile table of the CT machine, the radiologist's gentle hands positioning my throbbing wrist, the sharp sting of an IV needle in my arm, the gradual, welcome dulling of the pain as medication began to flow into my veins. Through it all, I clung to one thought, desperate to tell someone what had really happened. As I was being wheeled back from one of the scans, I passed the emergency room waiting area. My parents were sitting with Chloe, my mother gently wiping non-existent tears from Chloe's face, while my father spoke intently to a uniformed police officer. A hospital security guard stood nearby taking notes. "Officer Jenkins, we understand this is all protocol," my father was saying, his voice carrying the authoritative, commanding tone he used to close business deals. "But I can assure you, this was nothing more than a simple, unfortunate accident. My younger daughter witnessed the entire thing and did everything she could to prevent it. I wanted to scream the truth, to shout that they were all liars, but my mouth wouldn't cooperate. The medication was pulling me under, making my thoughts feel fuzzy and disconnected." Later that evening, in a private room, Dr. Winters delivered his diagnosis. "You have 3 broken ribs, a fractured left wrist, a moderate concussion, and significant internal bruising," he stated matter-of-factly. "You're very lucky, Miss Pierce. A fall down a flight of concrete stairs can easily be fatal." Lucky was not the word I would have chosen. As night fell, I drifted in and out of consciousness, vaguely aware of nurses periodically checking my vital signs and adjusting my IV drip. Through the haze, I heard my parents' voices in the hallway just outside my room. "We need to get our story straight before she's fully conscious and starts talking," my father was saying, his voice low but intense. "The hospital is required to report injuries like this, and we can't have any complications." "Chloe is just devastated," my mother replied, her voice filled with pity for the wrong daughter. "She truly did try to catch Alexandra." "Of course she did," my father agreed instantly. "And that is exactly what we will tell everyone. It was a tragic accident. Alexandra was always such a clumsy child." Their voices faded as they walked down the hall, leaving me alone with the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor and the crushing certainty that no one would ever believe me against the united front of my family. No one, perhaps, except for Nurse Brenda, who had seen something and who had seen that camera. As the pain medication pulled me back under, I clung to that one small sliver of hope like a lifeline. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds, waking me. My entire body felt like it had been hit by a truck, and each breath sent a sharp, stabbing pain through my chest. I blinked at the unfamiliar acoustic-tiled ceiling, momentarily disoriented, until the events of the previous day came rushing back with sickening clarity. Chloe's hands on my back, the terrifying weightlessness of the fall, my parents rushing to comfort her instead of me. A young nurse with a kind smile came in to check my monitors. Her name tag read Tracy. "Good morning, Alexandra. I'm just going to check your pain level and your vitals, okay?" I managed a slight nod, wincing at the small movement. "On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your pain right now?" "An 8?" I whispered, my lips dry and cracked. Tracy nodded sympathetically. "That's to be expected after what you've been through. I'll get you something for that as soon as I check your blood pressure." As she wrapped the cuff around my uninjured arm, I summoned my courage. "The security camera," I managed to say. "In the stairwell." Tracy gave me a confused look. "I'm sorry?" Before I could explain, the door to my room opened and my family filed in. My mother was carrying a large vase of yellow roses. My father was clutching a giant teddy bear with a get-well-soon balloon tied to its ear, and Chloe trailed behind them, her eyes downcast in a perfect imitation of sisterly concern. The performance was so convincing, it might have worked on me if I hadn't caught the brief, triumphant smirk she shot my way when our parents' backs were turned. "Oh, sweetheart," my mother exclaimed, bustling over to set the flowers on the windowsill. "We were so worried about you." My father placed the bear on the bedside table. "The doctor says you're going to be just fine. A few weeks of rest, and you'll be as good as new." Chloe hovered near the door, dabbing at her invisible tears. "I'm so sorry I couldn't catch you," she whispered. "It all just happened so fast." Nurse Tracy smiled at them. "I'll leave you folks to visit for a bit. The doctor will be by in about an hour for his rounds. Just press the call button if you need anything, Alexandra." The moment the door clicked shut behind her, the entire atmosphere in the room shifted. My mother's warm smile became fixed and brittle. My father's posture stiffened, and Chloe moved to stand closer to them, as if for protection. "We've spoken to the hospital administrator," my father began, his business voice taking over. "Since this was clearly an accident, they just need you to sign a few forms for the insurance claim." He pulled a sheaf of papers from his jacket pocket and placed them on the rolling tray table over my bed. I stared at the documents, then back at my father. "It wasn't an accident," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. Chloe pushed me. The room went completely, utterly silent for 3 long heartbeats. Then my mother let out a high, nervous laugh. "Oh, darling, the medication must be making you confused," she said, patting my hand condescendingly. "You fell, sweetheart. Chloe tried to help you." "No," I insisted, looking directly at Chloe. "She pushed me. She was angry about Grandma's will." My father's face darkened. "That is enough, Alexandra. You've always had a flair for the dramatic, but this is a serious accusation. You could do real damage to your sister's reputation." "What about the damage to me?" I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, a concussion. "Doesn't any of that matter to you?" "Of course it matters," my mother interjected quickly. "We are all terribly upset about your fall." "It wasn't a fall," I repeated firmly. "And there's a security camera in that stairwell. It will show everyone exactly what happened." A flicker of uncertainty crossed my father's face, but Chloe immediately stepped forward, real tears now streaming down her cheeks. "How can you say that?" she sobbed. "How can you be so cruel? I tried to save you. I reached for you, but you were already falling too fast." My mother instantly wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Shh, it's okay, darling. Alexandra's just confused from the medication and the head injury. She doesn't mean what she's saying. Actually, she might have a point about the confusion," my father said, his tone chillingly calculated. "In fact, we should probably mention this to the doctor. Memory problems after a concussion are quite common. It's likely you don't remember what really happened, Alexandra. The gaslighting was so blatant, so familiar, I could have scripted it myself." Before I could respond, a nurse poked her head in the door. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been a change in Evelyn Pierce's condition. The doctor would like to speak with the family immediately." My parents exchanged worried glances. "We should go," my mother said. "Chloe, you stay here with your sister. We'll be back as soon as we can." As they hurried out, Chloe's sympathetic expression evaporated. She moved to the side of my bed, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "No one is ever going to believe you over me. They never have. If you know what's good for you, you'll sign those papers and stick to the story that it was an accident." "Why?" I asked, a genuine desperate need to understand bubbling up inside me. What did I ever do to make you hate me this much? Something cold and dark flickered in her eyes. "You existed. she hissed. Always so perfect, so responsible. Grandma's favorite. She picked up the pen from the tray table and held it out to me. Sign the papers, Alex, or I promise you, things will get much, much worse. Before I could answer, the door opened again. It was head nurse Brenda, her expression unreadable. Chloe instantly recoiled, the tears magically reappearing. I'll just go get you some water, sis, she said loudly, for Brenda's benefit. I'll be right back. As Chloe slipped out of the room, Nurse Brenda closed the door firmly behind her and walked to my bedside. How are you really feeling today, Alexandra? She asked, checking my IV. Like I was pushed down a flight of stairs, I replied, watching her reaction closely. Her eyes met mine, sharp and knowing. Interesting choice of words, she said, then glanced at the door to make sure we were truly alone. I reviewed the security footage from the stairwell yesterday. My heart gave a painful lurch against my broken ribs. You did? She nodded. It's hospital protocol for any fall on the premises. I've been a nurse for 20 years, Ms. Pierce. I know what an accident looks like, and I know what an intentional two-handed shove looks like. A fragile hope bloomed in my chest for the first time since the fall. So, what happens now? I've already spoken with Mr. Dawson, the hospital administrator. The footage has been secured, and a copy has been turned over to hospital security and the Denver Police Department. And Officer Jenkins will want to speak with you once you're feeling a bit stronger. Tears of pure relief stung my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for believing me. Her professional expression softened. I believe what I saw. And what I saw was an assault. She checked her watch. Your family will likely be in a meeting with your grandmother's doctor for at least another 30 minutes. Would you like to see the footage for yourself? I nodded, my throat too tight with emotion to speak. She pulled a tablet from her pocket and tapped the screen a few times. Mr. Dawson authorized me to show this to you. The camera angle is crystal clear. The video began, showing the stairwell from a high corner. I watched myself walk down the steps with Chloe following closely behind. There was no audio, but our body language told the entire story. My measured pace, turning occasionally to respond to her, Chloe's increasingly aggressive posture, our tense argument on the landing. And then, there it was, an undeniable, brutal clarity. Chloe's hands extending, a forceful, deliberate push into the center of my back as I turned to walk away. My body pitching forward, the desperate, futile grab for the railing, and the sickening ragdoll tumble down the concrete steps. The video continued, showing Chloe's momentary look of pure satisfaction, which was quickly replaced by a mask of manufactured panic the second my parents entered the stairwell. I couldn't speak for several long moments after the video ended. The validation of seeing what I knew had happened was overwhelming. There are cameras on each landing, Nurse Brenda explained gently. We have footage of the entire incident from multiple angles. There is absolutely no ambiguity about what took place. My parents won't believe it, I said quietly, the reality of my situation sinking in. They'll find a way to explain it away. They always do. They can try, she agreed. But the evidence speaks for itself. We heard voices approaching in the hallway, and Brenda quickly tucked the tablet away. Hospital security will be speaking with your family this afternoon. Try to get some rest until then. The door opened and my parents entered, with Chloe trailing behind them. My father's face was tense, my mother's eyes red-rimmed and puffy. Grandma's pneumonia has developed some serious complications, my mother explained, her voice strained. They're moving her to the intensive care unit. Under normal circumstances, my heart would have dropped. I would have been desperate for details, offering comfort, making plans to be by her side. But all I could think about was the video on that tablet and what was about to happen. I didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, a sharp knock at the door announced the arrival of 2 uniformed hospital security officers and a man in a tailored suit who introduced himself as Gregory Dawson, the hospital administrator. Mr. and Mrs. Pierce, Mr. Dawson said formally. "We need to speak with you regarding the incident involving your daughters yesterday." My father immediately puffed out his chest, taking charge. Of course, as we explained to Officer Jenkins, it was a deeply unfortunate accident. Alexandra lost her footing on the stairs, and Chloe was simply unable to catch her in time. Mr. Dawson's expression remained perfectly neutral. "We have reviewed the security footage from the stairwell, Mr. Pierce. I'm afraid it shows something quite different." The blood visibly drained from my father's face. "What are you implying?" "The footage clearly and unequivocally shows your daughter, Chloe Pierce, deliberately pushing Alexandra, causing her fall and subsequent injuries." Chloe let out a dramatic gasp. "That's not true. I would never, ever hurt my sister." My mother clutched at the pearls around her neck. "There must be some mistake. Perhaps the angle of the camera is misleading. We have footage from 3 separate cameras," one of the security officers stated flatly. "The evidence is unambiguous. We've already provided copies to the Denver PD." My father's shock quickly morphed into damage control mode. "I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. Family matters can be complex. Perhaps there was some playful interaction that went wrong. Pushing someone down a concrete staircase is not playful, Mr. Pierce," Nurse Brenda said firmly from the corner of the room. Suddenly, Chloe collapsed into a chair, her entire demeanor shifting in an instant. Real tears now flowed freely as she buried her face in her hands. "It was an accident," she wailed. "We were arguing and I reached out in frustration. I never meant to push her that hard." The swift pivot from outright denial to admitting partial responsibility while minimizing intent was classic Chloe. I watched as my parents immediately rushed to her side, their protective instincts on full display. "You see?" my father insisted, turning back to Mr. Dawson. "A terrible accident during a heated sisterly disagreement. Surely we can handle this as a private family matter." Mr. Dawson slowly shook his head. "I'm afraid not. This hospital has a legal and ethical obligation to report an assault that occurs on our premises, especially one that results in serious injuries. The police will be taking statements from everyone involved." As if on cue, Officer Jenkins appeared at the door, this time accompanied by a female detective. The small hospital room suddenly felt very crowded. My father's face hardened as he turned to me, his eyes blazing. "Alexandra, think very, very carefully about what you are doing. This is your sister, your family. Do you really want to destroy all of us over a momentary disagreement? The emotional blackmail might have worked on me just 2 days ago, but something fundamental had changed inside me. Maybe it was seeing the indisputable evidence with my own eyes, or maybe it was the simple, profound validation from Nurse Brenda and the hospital staff. Whatever the reason, I found my voice. I didn't push myself down those stairs, Dad. Chloe did. And for the first time in my life, I'm not going to pretend otherwise just to keep the peace." My mother's face crumpled. "How can you do this to us? To your sister? After everything we have done for you?" The sheer absurdity of her statement might have made me laugh if it weren't so deeply painful. Everything they'd done for me, like always taking Chloe's side, like minimizing my accomplishments while celebrating her mediocrity. Mrs. Pierce, the female detective, intervened, her voice calm but firm. "Your daughter is the victim of a violent crime here. She has 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and a concussion. I suggest you consider that before you accuse her of causing harm to your family." As the detective, whose name I would learn was Sarah Harris, approached my bed, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could give in to the immense pressure just as I had countless times before, or I could finally stand up for myself and demand that the truth be acknowledged. Looking at my family's angry, pleading faces, I knew they were all counting on me to fold. They were relying on a lifetime of conditioning that had taught me to always put Chloe's needs and feelings above my own. Not this time. Detective Sarah Harris was thorough and compassionate as she took my official statement later that afternoon. She was a woman in her mid-40s with practical, no-nonsense short hair and intelligent, perceptive eyes. She recorded every detail of my account, from the argument in the stairwell to Chloe's whispered, "You had it coming," as I lay injured on the ground. "The security footage confirms your version of events 100%, she told me after I had finished. "We have clear, time-stamped views from 3 different cameras. There's no question that this was a deliberate act. My family won't see it that way," I said wearily. "They'll find a way to excuse her behavior. They always do." Detective Harris made a note in her pad. "Has your sister been violent toward you in the past?" The question made me pause. Had she? There had been so many accidents over the years. The time she had accidentally slammed my hand in the car door. The accidental spilling of a pot of boiling coffee on my lap during a family dinner. The accidental deletion of my master's thesis from my laptop just days before it was due. "Nothing this serious," I finally answered. "But there's been a long-standing pattern of harmful behavior disguised as accidents." "And your parents typically side with your sister?" she asked. "Without fail," I confirmed. She nodded thoughtfully. "I've already spoken with your parents and your sister. They've retained an attorney, a man named Richard Cooper. He's a heavy hitter, well known in the city. Of course they had. My father would spare no expense to protect his precious golden child." "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We filed charges of second-degree assault against Chloe Pierce. Given the severity of your injuries and the crystal-clear evidence, the district attorney's office is taking this very seriously. There will be a preliminary hearing scheduled as soon as you are well enough to attend." The full reality of what this meant crashed down on me. This was no longer just about standing up for myself in a family argument. My sister could face real criminal charges. My family relationships, already strained to the breaking point, would likely be permanently destroyed. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in. Was I really doing the right thing? Detective Harris seemed to read my mind. "Alexandra, what happened to you was not a minor family squabble. Your injuries could have been fatal. You have every right to seek justice." After she left, I lay back against the stiff hospital pillows, exhausted but resolute. My phone, which a nurse had retrieved for me, began to buzz with incoming messages. News travels fast in a family crisis. My Uncle Thomas expressing shock and cautiously asking what had really happened. My cousin Jenna texting that she always knew Chloe had a dark side. And most surprisingly, a message from my father's sister, my Aunt Carol, whom I hadn't seen in over a year. "I believe you." Her text read simply, "Call me when you can talk privately." The next morning brought a fresh wave of horror. Chloe had apparently taken to social media, launching a preemptive strike by sharing her twisted version of events. According to her lengthy, tear-jerking post, I had been acting erratically and aggressively in the stairwell, and she had merely reached out to stabilize me when I lost my balance. The security footage, she claimed, was misleading and failed to capture the full context of my unstable behavior. My marketing colleague Denise forwarded me a screenshot with a concerned message. "Is this true, Alex? People are sharing it everywhere." Soon after, my phone rang with an unknown number. It was my boss, Martin. "Alexandra, I've received some concerning calls this morning," he began awkwardly. "Someone claiming to be your mother called my office. She said you're having some sort of mental health crisis and are making false accusations against family members." I closed my eyes. The betrayal a physical cut, deep and sharp. "Martin, I am in the hospital with 3 broken ribs and a fractured wrist because my sister pushed me down a flight of stairs. There is security footage that proves it." His relief was audible. "That's what I figured. Listen, don't worry about a thing here. Take all the time you need to recover. Your job is secure." Not everyone was so supportive. By that afternoon, I discovered that Chloe had started a GoFundMe campaign titled, "Help Me Fight False Accusations." The description painted me as a deeply jealous and vindictive older sister who had fabricated an assault claim after an accidental fall. It had already raised several $1,000s from my parents' circle of friends. Dr. Anya Sharma, the hospital psychologist, visited me that evening. She was a thoughtful woman with a gentle demeanor, and she explained that Nurse Brenda had requested the consultation. Often in cases of family violence, there are long-standing patterns of emotional abuse that precede a physical incident, she explained. Would you be comfortable talking a bit about your family dynamics? For the first time in my life, I spoke openly and honestly about growing up in Chloe's shadow, the constant comparisons, the dismissal of my achievements, the subtle and not so subtle messages that I was less valuable, less loved. Dr. Sharma listened without judgment, occasionally asking a clarifying question. What you're describing fits a classic pattern of a narcissistic family system, she said after I finished. The golden child and scapegoat dynamic is unfortunately common, though it rarely escalates to this level of physical violence. So I'm not crazy for feeling this way my whole life? I asked. She smiled kindly. Quite the opposite. Your perceptions appear to be remarkably clear and accurate, especially considering the years of intense gaslighting you've endured. That shows a significant amount of emotional resilience. Our session was interrupted by a nurse informing me that my parents were in the lobby, demanding to see me. Dr. Sharma offered to stay if I wanted support, but I declined. This was a confrontation I needed to face on my own. They entered the room looking grim, my father clutching a leather portfolio that I knew contained legal documents. The preliminary hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday, he announced without any preamble. Richard, our lawyer, believes we can get this all dismissed if you agree to drop the charges. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Darling, you need to understand what this is doing to the family. Your grandmother's condition has worsened from all the stress. Chloe can't eat or sleep. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof, and I have 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and a concussion, I reminded her, my voice flat. Because my sister deliberately pushed me down a flight of concrete stairs. My father's jaw tightened. The footage is open to interpretation. Richard says juries understand that family arguments can sometimes lead to regrettable moments of physical contact. Physical contact? I repeated, incredulous. She could have killed me. Don't be so melodramatic, my mother sniffed. Dr. Winters said you're healing very well. My father opened his portfolio and removed the papers. We have a simple solution. You sign this statement saying you do not wish to press charges, and we can put this entire mess behind us. I stared at the document, then back at my parents. And if I don't? His expression hardened into something I had never seen before. Then you are no longer welcome in this family. Your trust fund will be revoked. Your relationship with your grandmother, your cousins, your entire extended family will be irreparably damaged. Is that really what you want? The threat was explicit, brutal, and everything I had ever feared. But something had shifted inside me during those days in the hospital. Perhaps it was seeing the incontrovertible proof of Chloe's actions, or the validation from medical professionals and law enforcement that what happened to me mattered. What I want, I said slowly, is for Chloe to take responsibility for her actions. What I want is for you, just once, to care more about the fact that I was seriously injured than you do about protecting her from the consequences. My mother's face crumpled. How can you be so selfish? After everything we have done for you, what exactly have you done for me? I asked, a genuine curiosity in my voice. When have you ever, not once, put my needs or my feelings before Chloe's? The question hung in the air between us, heavy and unanswered. My father gathered his papers stiffly. You have until the hearing to reconsider your position. After that, we will have no choice but to cut all ties completely. They left without another word, the threat of disownment hovering in the room like a storm cloud. I should have felt devastated, terrified of losing my family, as flawed as they were. Instead, I felt an unexpected, startling sense of clarity. For 32 years, I had been desperately trying to earn the unconditional love that should have been my birthright. Perhaps it was finally time to stop trying. The day of my discharge from the hospital arrived, but I had nowhere to go. My apartment was a third-floor walk-up, an impossible challenge with my injuries. My parents had made it crystal clear that their home was only open to me if I dropped the charges against Chloe. As I sat on the edge of the hospital bed in a set of borrowed clothes, trying to figure out my next move, Nurse Brenda knocked on the door. "Your aunt is here," she said with a warm smile. "Carol Pierce. She says she's your father's sister." Aunt Carol swept into the room, her familiar floral perfume bringing a rush of happy childhood memories. Unlike my mother's brittle, polished elegance, Aunt Carol had always been warm and genuine, with laugh lines around her eyes and a frankness that often put her at odds with my father. "Look at you," she said softly, taking in my cast and the careful way I held my ribs. "That girl finally went too far, didn't she?" The simple, immediate acknowledgement of the truth nearly undid me. I fought back tears as Aunt Carol sat beside me on the bed. "Your brother called to give me his version of events," she continued, naming my father, full of convenient accidents and misunderstandings. The same tired excuses he's been making for Chloe since she was old enough to talk. "You believe me?" I asked, hating how small and fragile my voice sounded. "Of course I do. I've watched Chloe manipulate your parents for her entire life. The only difference is, I never had concrete proof until now." She patted my knee. "The hospital sent me your discharge instructions. You're coming to stay with me until you're back on your feet." A wave of profound relief washed over me. "Are you sure? Dad will be furious with you." She let out a hearty laugh. "Oh, honey, Robert's been furious with me since we were kids. It hasn't stopped me from doing the right thing yet." Her expression softened. "The guest room is all made up, and it's on the first floor, so no stairs to worry about. Aunt Carol's cozy Cape Cod-style house became my sanctuary over the next few weeks. Physical therapy was grueling, the pain often bringing me to tears. But slowly, my body began to heal. The emotional wounds, however, were proving to be far more stubborn. 2 weeks after my discharge, I received an unexpected call from Michael, Chloe's ex-boyfriend. They had dated seriously for nearly a year before a messy breakup 6 months earlier. "I saw the news about what happened," he said without any preamble, and I wish I could say I was surprised. "What do you mean?" I asked. He hesitated for a moment. "Chloe has serious anger issues, Alex. I experienced it firsthand. The night we broke up, she threw a full wine bottle at my head. It missed, but it put a hole clean through my apartment wall." My grip tightened on the phone. "Did you report it? Number?" She cried, swore she'd get therapy. I was young and stupid and just wanted out of the relationship. He paused. But I kept the texts she sent me afterward, threatening me 1 minute, then apologizing and begging the next, then threatening me again. "I think they might help your case. They show a clear pattern." The evidence continued to mount. Detective Harris, in her investigation, uncovered 3 previous incidents where Chloe had been involved in accidents that resulted in injuries to others. A college roommate who slipped and fell down icy steps right after a major argument with Chloe. A former co-worker who suffered second-degree burns when Chloe accidentally knocked over a pot of hot coffee. A neighbor's child who broke his arm falling from a tree that Chloe had allegedly dared him to climb. "In every single case, your parents intervened," Detective Harris explained during one of our meetings. "Financial settlements were arranged out of court. No charges were ever filed. The pattern was sickeningly clear. But the most damning piece of evidence came from the most unexpected source. My grandmother, now recovered enough to leave the ICU, had requested to see me privately. I visited her in her new hospital room, shocked by how frail and diminished she looked. "I need to give you something," she said, her voice weak but resolute. She directed me to her handbag, where I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. I wrote this the day after you told me about your promotion. I was going to mail it, but then I got sick. Inside was a long, handwritten letter detailing multiple instances where she had personally witnessed Chloe's disturbing behavior and my parents' complicity in enabling it. She described overhearing Chloe threatening me when she thought no one was listening and watching my parents dismiss my concerns as overreactions when I tried to tell them what was happening. I did change my will last month, Grandma confirmed, her eyes meeting mine. Not because you manipulated me, but because I have watched how they treat you for 32 years. You deserve to be safe and cherished, Alexandra. Her words were the validation I had been craving my entire life. As the preliminary hearing approached, I found myself surrounded by an unexpected army of support. Nurse Brenda had organized several hospital staff members who had witnessed the aftermath of the incident, all willing to testify if needed. My colleagues at the marketing firm sent daily messages of encouragement and offers of help, and Aunt Carol stood firmly by my side, undeterred by my father's increasingly angry calls, demanding she stop interfering in our family's private business. The night before the hearing, my parents made one final, desperate attempt at manipulation. They arrived at Aunt Carol's house unannounced, with Chloe in tow. She looked thin and drawn, her eyes red and puffy, clearly coached to appear as pitiful as possible. "Please, Alex," she whimpered, using the childhood nickname she knew I hated. "I made a terrible, terrible mistake. I just need one more chance." My father stepped forward, holding out another set of paperwork. "We've spoken to Richard. If you sign this statement, withdrawing your accusations, Chloe has agreed to enter an intensive anger management program. We can handle this privately, as a family." I looked at them, really looked at them, perhaps for the very first time without the filter of hope. My father, tall and imposing, accustomed to getting his way through intimidation. My mother, perfectly coiffed even in a crisis, more concerned with appearances than with reality. And Chloe, the master manipulator, already calculating her next move behind the mask of performative tears. "No," I said simply. "What do you mean, no?" my father demanded, his voice rising. "I mean no. I will not sign anything. I will not drop the charges. And I will not pretend this didn't happen. After everything we have done for you," my mother cried, falling back on her favorite hollow refrain. "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked again, the question that had gone unanswered in the hospital. "All my life you've taught me that my feelings don't matter, that my safety doesn't matter, that my achievements don't matter. The only thing that has ever mattered is protecting Chloe." "That's not true," my mother protested weakly. "It is absolutely true," Aunt Carol interjected, stepping up behind me. "And deep down, Eleanor, you know it." My father's face darkened with rage. "This is your final chance, Alexandra. You drop this nonsense now, or as of this moment, you are no longer our daughter." The threat that had once terrified me to my core now felt almost liberating. "I think I stopped being your daughter a long time ago, Dad," I said quietly. "Maybe I never really was." After they left, I sat with Aunt Carol on her porch swing, watching the first stars emerge in the clear night sky. "Am I doing the right thing?" I asked quietly. She squeezed my hand. "The right thing is rarely the easy thing, Alexandra. But yes, I believe with all my heart that you are." That night, I worked with my therapist, Dr. Sharma, to prepare my victim impact statement for the court. As I articulated the lifetime of emotional abuse that had culminated in that single act of violence, I felt something profound shifting inside me. For the first time, I was claiming my own story, my own truth, without apologizing for it or minimizing it to make others more comfortable. "Whatever happens in that courtroom tomorrow," Dr. Sharma said as we finished, "you have already taken the most important step. You have chosen to value yourself." The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, wood-paneled and intimidatingly formal. I sat beside Detective Harris and the district attorney, a sharp, serious woman named Julia Matthews. Across the aisle, Chloe sat between my parents and Richard Cooper, the expensive attorney my father had hired. Other than Aunt Carol and Nurse Brenda, the gallery was sparsely filled with a few court reporters and staff. Judge Peterson, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, called the court to order. The proceedings began with the prosecution presenting the evidence, starting with the security footage from all 3 angles. The courtroom fell silent as the video played on the large screens, the deliberate two-handed push unmistakable from every view. I heard my mother let out a muffled sob when the footage clearly showed Chloe's satisfied smirk before she composed her face into a mask of panic for my parents' arrival. Richard Cooper tried to argue that the footage merely depicted an emotional moment between sisters and that Chloe had reached out in frustration, never intending to cause serious harm. The judge's skeptical expression suggested she wasn't buying it for a second. The hospital staff testified next. Dr. Winters detailed the extent of my injuries, emphasizing that falls of this nature frequently result in permanent disability or even death. Nurse Brenda calmly described the stark discrepancy between my family's initial account of an accident and what the footage clearly revealed. When it was my turn to speak, I felt surprisingly calm. I described the argument in the stairwell, Chloe's rage over our grandmother's will, and the deliberate, forceful nature of the push. Then I took a deep breath and read my impact statement, detailing the lifetime of emotional abuse that had preceded this physical assault. My physical injuries will heal, I concluded, my voice steady. But the knowledge that my own sister would intentionally try to harm me, and that my parents would choose to protect her rather than acknowledge the truth, has caused a wound that may never fully close. Chloe took the stand next, her entire demeanor transformed. Gone was the confident, manipulative woman I knew. In her place was a fragile, tearful figure who spoke in a trembling voice about a momentary lapse in judgment and her deep and abiding regret. She claimed that the stress over our grandmother's illness had affected her mental state, causing her to react without thinking during our argument. I never, ever meant to hurt Alexandra, she insisted, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. I love my sister. This was a terrible accident that I will regret for the rest of my life. Her performance might have been convincing if not for the mountain of evidence that followed. Detective Harris presented Michael's text messages, which showed Chloe's clear pattern of threats and manipulation. The records of the previous accidents involving Chloe were entered into evidence, along with documentation of the financial settlements my parents had arranged to make them go away. But most damaging of all was my grandmother's deposition, which had been recorded from her hospital bed since she was still too weak to attend in person. Her clear, detailed, and unwavering account of Chloe's disturbing behavior over the years, and my parents' consistent enabling of it, left no room for doubt. When all the evidence had been presented, Judge Peterson looked directly at Chloe. Miss Pierce, the evidence before this court suggests that this was not an isolated incident, but rather part of a long-standing and disturbing pattern of behavior. Do you wish to revise your statement before I make my ruling? Chloe glanced nervously at Richard Cooper, who gave her a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Your Honor, she began, her voice suddenly steadier. I did push my sister. I was angry about family matters and I lost control, but I never intended to cause such serious harm. The partial admission was a transparently strategic move, a desperate attempt to mitigate the consequences now that outright denial was no longer a viable option. Judge Peterson seemed unimpressed. Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, including clear video footage and the defendant's own partial admission, I find that there is probable cause to proceed with charges of second-degree assault. Given the severity of the victim's injuries and the apparent premeditation, I am setting bail at $50,000. My father immediately stood up to address the court. Your Honor, our family would prefer to handle this matter. Sit down, Mr. Pierce, the judge commanded, or I will have you removed for contempt. As the bailiff moved to lead a stunned Chloe away, she turned and looked at me one last time. The hatred in her eyes was raw and undisguised, a single moment of terrifying truth amid a lifetime of performances. My parents filed out of the courtroom without a single glance in my direction, my mother leaning heavily on my father's arm as if she were the one who had been wounded. Outside the courthouse, a small group of reporters gathered, shouting questions. Aunt Carol quickly ushered me toward her car, shielding me from the cameras. As we drove away, I felt a dizzying, overwhelming mix of emotions. Profound relief that the truth had finally been acknowledged. Deep, aching grief for the family I had lost, or perhaps had never really had in the first place. And beneath it all, a tentative, fragile sense of freedom. The weeks that followed brought significant, sweeping changes. Chloe, facing a near-certain conviction at trial, accepted a plea deal that included several years of probation, mandatory intensive therapy, and a permanent restraining order that prevented her from ever contacting me again. My parents paid for everything, of course, and continued to insist to their friends that the whole incident had been a terrible misunderstanding and that our family would heal from this difficult time. My grandmother, upon her recovery, moved in with Aunt Carol, unwilling to return to my parents' home. She revised her will again, this time excluding Chloe entirely and significantly reducing my parents' inheritance. "Actions have consequences, Alexandra," she told me during one of our afternoon tea sessions. "It's a lesson your parents should have taught your sister long ago." With Aunt Carol's help, I found a new apartment in a secure building with an elevator. My colleagues at work welcomed me back with incredible understanding and flexibility, allowing me to work remotely until I felt fully ready to return to the office. The physical therapy continued, often painful but always necessary, gradually restoring my strength and mobility. Perhaps the most significant change, however, was internal. Working with Dr. Sharma, I began to slowly recognize and dismantle the harmful beliefs I had internalized growing up. The constant nagging message that my needs were less important, that keeping the peace meant accepting mistreatment, that family loyalty required self-erasure. Those toxic beliefs had shaped all of my relationships, not just those with my family. 6 months after the incident, I received an unexpected letter from my mother. Unlike her previous attempts at contact, which had all focused on guilt-tripping me into putting the family back together without any acknowledgement of wrongdoing, this letter contained something new, a hesitant, fumbling admission of failure. "I don't know when things went so wrong," she wrote. "Perhaps we did favor Chloe. Perhaps we should have listened to you more. I miss my daughter." It wasn't a full apology, not by a long shot, but it was a start. After discussing it at length with Dr. Sharma, I agreed to meet my mother at a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. The conversation was awkward and stilted. Years of dysfunctional patterns couldn't be undone in a single hour over coffee. But for the very first time, my mother seemed to actually hear me when I spoke about my experiences growing up. We agreed to try monthly lunches, a tentative, fragile first step toward rebuilding something new, on entirely different terms. My father remained distant, unable or unwilling to acknowledge any mistake on his or Chloe's part. Chloe, I heard, had moved to Chicago after completing her court-mandated therapy, apparently starting fresh in a city where her history wasn't known. I felt no desire to reconnect with her. The memory of her satisfied smile as I fell was still burned into my mind. On the 1-year anniversary of the incident, I returned to St. Luke's Medical Center with a large gift basket for Nurse Brenda and the staff who had helped me. She greeted me with a warm hug, marveling at my recovery. "You look wonderful," she said, "strong." "I feel strong," I replied, and I realized with a jolt that it was true. The physical healing, as difficult as it had been, was the easy part. The emotional healing was an ongoing process, with setbacks and difficult days. But I was building a life based on truth rather than pretense, surrounding myself with people who valued me for who I was, not for who they needed me to be. In the end, that security camera, which had captured my sister's deliberate act of violence, had done more than just provide evidence for a court case. It had shattered the carefully constructed illusion that had defined my family for decades, and the painful, ugly truth it revealed had set me on a path toward authentic healing and real self-discovery. Sometimes, the family we choose to build for ourselves matters far more than the one we are born into. That's the lesson I carry forward, one day at a time. What's your experience with family dynamics? Have you ever had to set boundaries with toxic relatives, or been in a situation where telling the truth cost you important relationships? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about healing and finding strength in difficult situations. Remember that your truth always matters, even when others try to deny it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage on your own path to healing. End of story.